The Lord lays a hand on his son's shoulder. The stone under their feet is cold, centuries old. The air is thick, damp, smoke from torches dancing on the walls, and something else, almost invisible. The smell of long-set fear. His finger finds an almost invisible seam in the massive masonry. A huge block slides inward without a sound, revealing a gap of absolute darkness. No one, ever, must know. He speaks each word like a command. The voice bounces off the stone, multiplies, then dies away. This is not just a room, it's the last line of defense in a world where every neighbor could be an enemy, and every servant might turn traitor. Clean lines cut into stone. Architecture carved for paranoia. Hidden rooms, secret passages, false walls. They thread through history like a hidden nervous system inside castles and palaces. We'll pry open those stone hiding places and watch how architecture turned into a weapon, a way to save lives from brutal executioners. We'll learn what people tucked behind fake walls and how acoustic passages could turn a fortress into a giant ear for spies. We'll follow a king who used a secret tunnel to visit the greatest genius of his age, but every one of these stories raises two basic questions. First, what motive went beyond mere defense? And second, the biggest question of all, how do you keep something like that secret while you're building it? The answer lay in total, suffocating distrust. When the work ended, the builders did something a modern architect would call unthinkable. They burned every drawing, every plan, every calculation, down to the last speck of ash. Not a single scrap of paper remained that could betray the secret to an enemy, or even to the castle's next owner. Knowledge became immaterial. It turned into a legend, a whisper passed in the pitch black of the cellar from father to the sole, most trusted heir. They never wrote the secret down. They imprinted it on memory, making it at once the greatest treasure and a deadly curse. This obsession with secrecy spawned astonishing engineering. Caches built to survive months-long sieges. Hidden passageways that let people vanish in plain sight. Survival tools for those who had everything and who woke each day terrified of losing it. But what happened when those same technologies ended up in the hands of people who had nothing but faith? What did they build? They weren't hunted for castles. They were pursued for their convictions, and capture meant one thing: a slow, agonizing death on the scaffold. Reformation-era England. Here, authorities didn't just punish the wrong faith. They staged a theater of terror. When they caught a Catholic priest, they didn't give him a quick death. They hanged him, then cut him down from the gallows a second before the end. They disemboweled him while he was still conscious. Only after that did they quarter him. The state institutionalized this public, sadistic cruelty, and it gave rise to a very particular kind of architecture: the architecture of salvation. The genius behind it was a man named Nicholas Owen. He was a small, unassuming carpenter. His enemies called him Little John. He single-handedly built a clandestine network, crafting what became known as priest holes. These were more than simple hideouts. They were masterpieces of deception, woven into the very fabric of aristocratic houses. Tiny spaces under staircases, cavities behind false fireplace walls, hollow chambers inside beams and joists. Each priest hole was an engineering marvel, a refuge that could conceal a person for days right under the searchers' noses. Harvington Hall became his masterpiece. Priest hunters burst in again and again. They tapped every wall, pried up floorboards, tore apart the furniture. They found hiding places, one, then another. Victory felt close, but the hiding spots were empty. The house held 7 such places, and each discovery only baited the hunters while driving them into fury. They could sense the main prize nearby, yet it slipped away as if dissolving into the stone. Owen waged a psychological war. He built traps for the mind, not for the body. He planted obvious, easily found decoys. When a search party uncovered one, they sighed in relief, checked a box in their report, convinced the priest had fled and the job was done. Those false victories blinded them, stopping the search just a few steps from the true refuge. The truth was worse than anyone expected. The main hiding place at Harvington Hall sat where common sense refused to look. You reached it through the guardrobe shaft. In plain terms, a medieval toilet. To survive, a person had to descend a filthy, reeking drain pipe into a tiny stone slit. In total darkness, choking on the fumes, they waited for the footsteps above to die away. This was the height of despair, the moment when survival mattered more than any shred of dignity. People endured unimaginable humiliation for one thing, simply staying alive. But what happened when those same techniques landed in the hands of people who weren't hiding from death, but deciding other people's fates? What did kings, spies, and geniuses hide behind those secret doors, when the goal was no longer saving a soul, but hoarding untold treasure, stealing state secrets, or arranging clandestine meetings with the greatest mind of the age? 2,200 silver coins, 21 gold dinars, an engraved signet ring. This hoard lay in the Cluny Abbey for almost 900 years, until archaeologists stumbled across it by accident. A treasure frozen in time. Rulers' hiding places weren't just stashes for a rainy day. They were banks carved from stone, vaults the state kept secret. But the shine of gold pales next to the value of what you can't touch. The most precious treasure has always been information. They turned castles into giant stone ears. Narrow acoustic channels were cut through the thick walls, often beside chimneys, and led from the throne room or council chamber into a tiny hidden booth. A spy would sit there, ear pressed to the cold stone. Any careless whisper, any plotted conspiracy, any treason, amplified by the architecture, was delivered straight to the king. Paranoia spread. The very walls became traitors. But these secret passages did more than serve money and intrigue. Sometimes they became bridges between worlds. One man was King Francis I of France. The other was Leonardo da Vinci, the era's greatest genius, now almost 60. To see him, Francis ordered a secret tunnel dug from his castle at Amboise, straight to the Clos Lucé estate where Leonardo lived. This tunnel opened into another world. No court etiquette, no extra ears or watching eyes. Inside, the king became a student. The old master talked about how birds fly, the human body, and the workings of the universe. No guards, no advisors. Just torchlight, the creak of leather bindings, and two people who a slice of underground stone had granted the rare freedom to be themselves. And yet all the tales of treasure, spies, and prodigies pale beside one almost mythic question. It's not just why these passages existed, it's a harder question. How do you build a secret escape when your castle sits surrounded, around the clock, by an enemy army? A castle grown right out of the rock. Not a fortress. A fang jutting from the mountain's maw. A rocky spur. Its owner, the bandit baron Erasmus Luger, was a legend. When the imperial army came to take his head and saw that stone anomaly, they realized a normal siege wouldn't work. The castle's walls were the mountain itself. Still, they surrounded him. And they waited. For a whole year. The soldiers below starved, froze, and fell sick. Erasmus made a spectacle of it. He feasted in full view. He held celebrations. The pinnacle of his taunting was simple. Fresh cherries. Imagine the despair of an army chewing hardtack for months, watching the enemy on an unclimbable peak toss cherry pits down at them. Pits from ripe, just-picked fruit. This wasn't just humiliation, it was a message. Your siege is pointless. I have a hidden route to food and to freedom, and that route ran through a vast network of caves, a labyrinth the castle itself was built into. A year of humiliation, a year of powerless fury. The empire couldn't take the castle by force, so it bought it from within. The fall of Erasmus didn't come from a battering ram or a cannon. It came down to one single bribed servant. He didn't have to open the gates or poison his lord. He only had to give the signal at the right moment. A small, unnoticed gesture, light a lantern in the window. That moment arrived. Erasmus Luger went to the most vulnerable spot in any castle, the privy. A small outhouse jutting out from the main wall. The servant lit the lantern. Below, the gunners were already waiting. One precise shot. One stone cannonball. The great robber baron, the man who had terrorized an entire army for a year, was killed on the privy. His legend ended in farce. Erasmus's story leaves one question unanswered. Using a secret passage is one thing. Building one is another. How did architects and builders actually tuck intricate passageways and mechanisms into a castle's bones without a single one of the hundreds of stonemasons, carpenters, and laborers letting the secret slip? The secret wasn't in threats or treasure. It lived in the psychology of deception built into the very stone. Twist a wall-mounted candlestick, and you didn't just light a candle, you tripped a hidden lever, and a section of the mantle glided silently aside. It was the architecture of illusion, where every element pulled double duty, and the most ordinary object could become the key to escape. They took concealment to an art form. At Bran Castle, the back panel of a massive wardrobe wasn't wood at all. It was a door leading to a hidden stair between the first and third floors. In other fortresses, builders slipped an extra step into a spiral staircase. That single step acted as a lever, opening a passage in the wall. These tricks worked because they melted into daily life, part of the decor, part of the routine, invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. How do you keep hundreds of workers from talking? You don't. The solution was both brilliant and brutal. Trust the secret to no one. They pushed the division of labor to its absolute limit. One crew built an ordinary wall, a second team arrived in total darkness, feeling its way and carved a niche into that same wall. A third group sealed it from the other side, never knowing what lay inside. Only the chief architect and the lords saw the whole plan. Hundreds of hands assembled a masterpiece, each worker without the faintest idea what they were building. A mason works in a cramped tunnel. The air hangs heavy with dust and damp earth. The only light comes from a distant torch in the main corridor. Here, in this narrow crawl space, it's almost complete darkness. His fingers, hardened by the chisel, probe every jut and seam. He doesn't see. He feels the stone. His task is to lay this small section, fitting each block exactly. He has no idea that behind him another crew is building a library, or that the passage he's carving will one day save his master's life. He simply does his work, and in that blind, not knowing lies the greatest secret of invisible architecture. From paranoid lords to priests pushed to the edge, from royal scheming to the solitary genius of outliers, secret rooms were never just an architectural whim. They're an imprint of human passion carved into stone. Fear, hope, greed, and the hunger for knowledge. We only see the castle facades, their thick walls and soaring towers. The real story lives in the spaces between the stones, and it still waits to be read.